Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of the Let's Split build series where I am going to be going over making the case for the keyboard. As far as I'm aware, there are 3 cases that currently exist out there. So the first case has a bottom part to it that's made out of wood, and then it has an aluminum or steel plate that goes on top of it, and all the switches set inside that plate. And so yeah, it's a 2-part case. I wanted to have something that's completely one piece, or as close to one piece as possible and looking like that. And I also wanted to 3D print the case. So that case was out, but I'm going to be using that as reference. And the second case that I came across is a acrylic case, which is basically has a layer that's of acrylic with the switches set into, and then there's another bottom layer of acrylic underneath. And then they have these little post stands that connect the two. So it's 2 layers of acrylic with your PCB in the middle and your switches on top. And I mean, that case looks fine as well, but I don't want an open case and I don't want to make it out of acrylic. Like I said, I want a solid case. So I turned to Thingiverse and I found a different case, which is a 3D printed case that splits right down the middle. Let me go get that. So the third case I found is this split case, which sits like this. You have the switches that go on the top, and then you have these little holes in here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that you put the standoffs into, and you mount the PCB on top of that, and then the PCB and the switches hold this together. But this case has 2 problems that I can think of right off the bat. This was made for the V1 of Let's Split, and there's 2 PCB types. There's a V1 and the V2. And I got them later and I have the V2 board. So this is actually too small to fit a V2 board. And I did make a few modifications to get this working on a V2 board. But the other thing that I realized after I printed it out is that gap in between the 2 layers is just too easily visible. I wanted to make something where the side completely goes down and then I'll have like a little bottom flap that comes off the bottom here. So the case that I came up with it looks like the other one on the top, almost verbatim. And then you have the sides which go all the way down instead of splitting halfway in the middle. And on the inside, you'll notice there's a little lip on the inside to fit this bottom piece. And this bottom piece I designed so that there is a little bit of an angle here. It's about 8 degrees or so. So when I go and slip it into here, which is also angled on the bottom, it just fits right in and snaps on the bottom here. And I did put a little place for a screw, and so I can screw this in, but this is pressure fit and it's not going anywhere. So if I decide to put a screw on later, I can. And the back is this is for the USB plug from the Pro Micro. And this part right here is for the TRRS cable, which connects the 2 halves. And I split the case right there so that it would print right on this curve here, and it also gives it a little bit more of keeps it closed a little bit easier because of the pressure fit. You can hear that nice little snap there. So yeah, this is the final design that I came up with for the keyboard, and it is mostly good as far as print quality. I did use my Prusa i3, and it is about a 1 micron layer height, which turns out really smooth on the top, and you can see layers on the side. So I'm going to take this and sand it down, put some Bondo on there to fill it, and then I'm going to prime it and paint it. And I want this to look as close to a professional store-bought product as I can. So here we have both sides of the case. I have some 80 grit sandpaper, so that'd be the most coarse. I'll use that first. And then I have some 120 grit sandpaper here. I've done all the sanding for both of them now, and they look pretty good. I just want to fill in some of the imperfections, like I said, the warts that happened when I was printing out for the first time, or the first layer rather. So I have some Bondo glazing putty, which I hear is pretty good. It has a really fast working time. I have to mix up these both parts, like this part and then a hardener. And it takes about 5 minutes of working time once I mix them up. So I just want to explain this out first before I do it. And then it takes about 20 minutes for it to set and be able to sand. I'm just going to let it sit overnight because I have other things to do today. So it is the next day and everything is dry. I think it probably only took about 30 minutes for it to really dry and so I can make it sandable. But if you can tell here, it's have a full coating all the way around. There are a few rough spots and I'm just going to sand them out with the 120 grit paper. Just a little piece of paper here. And okay, so the next part that I'm going to do now that both of these guys are sanded and taken care of is I'm going to paint. I need to set up my paint station. Well, I don't really have a paint station, but I need to make one and set it up. But I have this ultra coverage primer here, just a spray primer here. And then once the primer is done, I will move on to this Satin Canyon Black. And that's going to be about the color here. So the plastic should look very similar to this when it's done. And so yeah, let's get to that. So here we are in my garage and I'm just gonna go ahead and paint this guy. So I have these on bench cookies, which are just these little things, and the only reason that they're there is to hold up the piece so it's not touching the plastic. And this is just on top of my table saw covered in plastic. And like I said, I'm using this Rust-Oleum primer here. So it's been an hour and I took them off and they are dry now. These guys are mostly dry. They're dry to the touch at least. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell, but there are still lines in here. I think I'm just gonna have to put a lot more layers of primer on there. But it's mostly good. There are some deeper divots like here and here. And I think I'll fill those with Bondo for tonight and do some more layers of primer tomorrow. But for right now, I'm just going to take some 320 grit sandpaper, go over it, and sand down some of this. So what we have here is, off camera, I did another coating of Bondo, sanded, and another 3 coats of primer. And I could keep doing this forever, literally keep doing this forever until it's perfect. But I think that 6 coats of primer and 2 coats of Bondo, and I've had enough sanding, so it looks pretty good, actually. Until you get really close up to it, there's a certain defects in little parts of it, but that's okay. You're never going to see it, especially with a satin black, because it's going to hide those defects really well, because it's satin and not glossy. So I'm just going to go ahead and put on my first coat here. Okay, so all the paint is dry and I decided to mask off the outsides. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to, there's this little lip on the bottom here that goes all the way around that's still not painted white. And I wanted to paint that white, or paint that black rather, so that whenever the bottom goes in, that there's not a white ring all the way around. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see the continuation of the series. This series will continue probably another 2 to 3 weeks time. Until next time.